This is the culmination of 15 years of research and development. It is a 1961 Classic Craftsman Drill Press. It was manufactured by the King Seeley Corporation of Ypsilanti, Michigan. It is model number 103-24531, a floor-standing 15.5-inch Series 150 drill press, and in 1961 it sold for $114.50. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff, and welcome to my shop. If you haven't already seen the Classic Craftsman Drill Press introduction and overview video, click here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to access some web-based resources and how to evaluate a drill press. So let's get started. Alright, so there are two links in the description of this video, and when you click on the first one, it will take you to vintagemachinery.org. And you should be looking at the Sears Craftsman page. There's a tab section across the top. We're not going to be concerned with that. We're looking for the second tier of tabs here, and specifically we're looking for publication reprints and the photo index. But before we go there, if you scroll down, this section here is the prefixes for all of the Craftsman tools. And if you recall, the drill press we're looking at is a 103-24531. So 103 prefix is the King Seeley Corporation. And you can click on this link. And this page will give you some history about King Seeley, their years of operation, even patent information. So that's kind of cool. But we're going to go to publication reprints, and these publications are for all of the various tools for Craftsman. So you have wood lathes, saws, you name it. And we can filter the results here for drill presses only. And then if you know the model number, you can type it in this section here and search for it. But I like using the find feature in the browser. 103-24531. And there we go. So if you click on View PDF, this is the actual operating instruction and parts list that came with this drill press in 1961. Over here you can download it and you can print it. And there you see the floor model and the benchtop model. This is a speed chart here where you position your belt on the two pulleys to get a specific speed. But what we're looking for is this parts list right here. So if we zoom in, cool thing about this parts list is, for an example, this set screw number 38, it tells you that it's a 5/16 by 18 thread 1/2 inch socket head cone point set screw. So if you're missing this set screw, you can just order one from McMaster-Carr or someplace like that on the internet to replace it. It doesn't give you that for everything. For instance, over here, number 3, pulley ball bearing, doesn't tell you the size of the ball bearing or the industry standard number. But for most of the stuff, most of the nuts and bolts, it'll give you the specific size for them. So if we scroll down, we get the parts diagram, and this thing is great because it shows all the parts in the drill press in their proper order and where they go in the drill press. So you can use this parts diagram to be able to disassemble or reassemble the drill press. And all of these numbers correspond with the key numbers in the parts list. So that's pretty cool. So if we go back, we look at the photo index. And again, this is all the different machines, wood lathes, saws, you name it. And we can filter the results for drill presses. And then we can go back up to find. And there are 11 results. So if we click on this first one, this is the drill press that we're looking at today. This is what it looked like when I got it. Pretty bad shape. Lots of rust, dirt, oil, grime, you name it. Didn't even have the proper motor for it. And then these are the pictures of it after I restored it. So that's Vintage Machinery. It's a great resource. The second link will take you to the Garage Journal forum. And I highly recommend that you go ahead and register for the forum. It's free, and it gets rid of these horrible pop-ups that are all over the page. So you want to go to forums, scroll down, go to tools. General tool discussion is all kinds of tools, even tools made today. But the vintage tool discussion is where we're going to go. And there are two threads on here that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is this Vintage Classic Craftsman Drill Press information thread. And this thread gives you the complete history of the Classic Craftsman Drill Press. Who made the various models, the years they were produced, the patents that were involved, all that good stuff. This is a good way to try to date your drill press, figure out what year it was made. So in addition to that, this is pretty much the go-to thread on the forum now. So if you have questions about a drill press you're working on or thinking about buying, this would be the thread to post those questions. And myself or one of the other members on the forum will usually respond back within 24 hours. But probably the more helpful thread will be this one, the Craftsman Drill Press information, belts, bearings, chucks, keys, etc. And again, you get a history of the drill press, some basic information like how you determine what size your drill press is. You measure from the center of the chuck to the column. If it's 7 3/4 of an inch, multiply that by 2, and that gives you 15.5 inches, which means you can drill to the center of a 15.5-inch circle. And there are plenty of images with items identified so that you can figure out how to use your drill press. But if you scroll to about halfway down on this thread, you'll see these springs, and this section here is going to be the most helpful for you because it'll have all the information you need to purchase any parts that you need for your drill press, especially if you're rebuilding one. So if you need the V-belts or if you need a new Jacobs chuck, what chuck you need to order, the size, the model number, where to get it from, what it costs, all that good stuff right there. If you're missing the chuck key, where to get it, which key it is, model number, and all that good stuff. Ball bearings. So all the Classic Craftsman drill presses have 2 ball bearings on the spindle pull assembly and 2 on the quill and spindle assembly. And these are the same. So you need 2 6205s. And you need 2 6202 5/8 bore ball bearings. And I even give you the specifics on the size for that ball bearing. It's a 25 millimeter bore by 52 millimeter outside diameter by 15 millimeters tall. In addition to these parts, there is brief tutorials on how to derust your drill press, what chemicals to use on it, how to paint it, how to strip it, how to lube it, all that good stuff. And then, of course, if you're logged in to this forum, in the signature block for every one of my posts, there's a link to all of my posts on here. And when I tear down a drill press and rebuild it, I do an entire thread on just that drill press. So that information should be helpful to you. But you won't see that hot link unless you are logged in. So that's the Garage Journal, and it's a great resource. Okay, so drill press evaluation. Why do it and how to do it? Well, you want to get, the best drill press you can for the money you're going to spend. And you want to get something that you're going to be able to use and not get it home and then figure out that, oh my God, it's missing this and this and this. And that's going to cost almost as much as what I paid for the drill press to replace. So before you go down that road of the learning curve that myself and several other people have had to go and experience for you. We have all got our own process of how we evaluate a drill press. For me, I visually inspect it to make sure that as much of the parts are there and the condition that they are in is in a pretty decent shape. Now, you saw the pictures of what this drill press looked like when I bought it, and there was a lot of rust, a lot of grease, a lot of dirt, a lot of sawdust on it, and that's going to be typical. But I can look at the hub and tell whether or not it's got a lot of rust on it and it's pitted, or it's got rust on it that I can remove and still preserve the chrome on it. So those are things that you need to take into consideration when you're evaluating that drill press. So these drill presses were not sold with motors. So if there's a motor on the drill press, we'll talk about it in a minute, but you're going to want to power that sucker up and make sure it's functional. So like I said, I'm just going to look at that drill press. I'm going to look for cracks in any of the cast iron. If there's a crack, I'm probably not buying it. If it's missing a lot of stuff, I'm probably not buying it. Now, most of these parts can be had online, eBay and other sites, but the hardest part that I've found to replace is the feed tension spring. And that's because they don't make them anymore and there is no manufacturer for them now. I've seen them sell on eBay for as much as $40. So if you've got a drill press that has a broken spring or a missing spring, I would recommend that you pass on that drill press, because they only come up on eBay a couple times a year. And when they do, somebody is clicking buy now immediately. So basically, you just want to make sure you're getting as complete of a drill press as you can, and it needs to be in fairly decent condition. Remember, they're tools, and they've probably been abused. And some of these drill presses can be 70 years or older. So, you're just going to want to look at it really close. So after I've visually inspected it, I'm going to want to power this motor up and see if it runs. And once I've got it operational, I'm going to look at the motor pulley, and I'm going to look at the chuck spinning, see if there's any noticeable wobble there. I'm going to look at the spindle pulley, and while those pulleys are spinning, I should be able to see if there's any bent sheaves on them, if I hear any rattling or anything like that. So Craftsman calls for a 1/2 horsepower 1750 RPM motor on these drill presses. And this motor is actually made 1750, 1725, and 3450. And you don't want a 3450 RPM motor on a drill press. 1725 or a 1750 will be fine, but not anything faster than that. And I bought a couple of these drill presses where the motor wasn't a Craftsman motor. It was a Marathon or a GE or a Dunlap, but it met all of the other parameters, and that's fine. So here we are on the other side of the drill press, and we're going to look at the motor wiring coming out of the motor. Most of the time, this is not going to be a grounded cord. You can make it a grounded cord, which I did on this drill press. You'll see when I hold it up to the camera that it is grounded now. And usually the wiring will come from the motor and it'll go to a box. You can see these holes in the side of the head. This is where somebody had mounted a switch box onto the drill press and they just ran the wiring to it, and that's where a big switch was. Notice that there's a screw inside there, and we're going to check that on both sides. Next, I'm just going to look at the tension knob. It should not be loose. And the lock nut for it, or the lock screw for it, make sure that's present. And then we're going to move around to the quill lock. So the OEM quill lock will actually hit the tension knob, but if it's set right, that's locked, and then that's unlocked. And you should have the coil returning, and if it doesn't, then there's something wrong with the spring. Either it's not set right or it's broken. So you're going to want to look at that. I'm going to check for play in the chuck and see if there's a lot of play on the spindle itself. Next, I'm going to make sure the chuck functions, and then I'm going to check the jaws on the chuck. I'll actually get a flashlight and look up in there to see if any of the jaws are broken, missing, or chipped. So next, we're going to come around and we're going to look at the pin for the pinion that's inside the hub there. So I'll rotate it, and there's the pin. You want to make sure that's present. If it's not, then there should be no return tension on the feed hub. So next, I'm going to look at the feed stop collar, make sure all the parts for it are present. I'm going to check the feed rod is there. It looks like it's in good condition. The nut for it, the feed stop bracket. This may be missing on a drill press, and finding a replacement is kind of hard. So I'm going to make sure that the safety nut for the safety collar for the chuck is there and it's tight. I'm going to move around and check the hub now. I'm going to work from the center, make sure the hub is in there good. And then I'm going to check the rods, make sure they're not stripped out, and the knobs for the rods. So again, finding these and replacing them is kind of hard. So you want to have them there and you want them to be in good condition. There's the other screw on the other side. It's a flat tip screw that should be in there. I'm going to look at the headband, make sure that it's not really badly worn or somebody's painted over it. So I'm going to check for the cap screws that hold the motor mount in place. Now this motor mount pivots. So the way that the motor mounts to the mounting bracket, there should also be a threaded rod down here. Mine was missing, so I just put a bolt in there. Now I'm going to look at the motor really good. We know that it works. This is a dual shaft motor, so I want to make sure the other shaft's not bent. And I'm going to again look at those pulleys and make sure that they are not bent on any of the sheaves. Make sure the pulley's not riding on those screws that you see sticking up out of the end of the motor, because that'll wear the pulley. I'm going to look at the spindle pulley and make sure that it's not bent. I should not be able to pull up on it. And if we look down inside the column, you should see there's a milled step in there. So this column is installed correctly. Sometimes somebody will install that column upside down, and there's a step in that column for an accessory. So next we're going to take a closer look at the data plate on the motor. You'll notice that this one has a code F148, and that's a date code for 1948. And a model number 115.6962. And now I'm going to test the pivoting of the tilt motor mount. So I'm going to grasp the bottom shaft and just tilt it. Make sure that it tilts fine, it's not bent. And next we're just going to work our way down the column. And we're going to look at the table. So we want to make sure that there's a chuck key and that it's the correct chuck key with the nub on the end. And then we're going to check the outside edge of the table to make sure it's not cracked or broken. And then we're going to look at the face of the table. Make sure that surface hasn't been drilled in a million times. Sometimes you'll see them with the holes all along there, and we call that the smile of shame. We're going to check the table lock, and we'll continue to work our way down the column. That's a column collar, it's an accessory. And we get to the base, and we want to make sure that the data plate on the base is present, that has the model number on it, and the set screw in the back of the base. And then we're going to check around the outer edge of the base to make sure it's not broken or cracked. And then we're going to check the headband really good, make sure that it's got panel screws holding it in place and it's in decent condition. And we're going to check the headlock, make sure it's got all its parts there. And then we're going to go ahead and spin the feed all the way out and then lock the quill in place. And we're going to see that it's got the quill gasket and the snap ring. We're going to check the feed stop bracket, make sure that it's nice and tight. We're going to go ahead and shake it a couple times, see how much play is in that quill, and then let it back up and make sure it's returning properly. And lastly, we're just going to check to make sure that the pinion screw is in place, the nut on the end of the stop bracket, and the lock screw for the tension is in there. Well, that wraps up how to evaluate a drill press. I hope you found this useful. More videos to come, so please like and subscribe. Thanks, and I will see you next time.